Добрый день.
Good afternoon.
Пожалуйста, слушаю вас.
Please, if you have any questions?
По итогам года у ЕАЭС очень
Following the
хорошие
results of
показатели
this
развития
year,
во всем
the Eurasian Economic
направлении.
Union shows very good
И хотелось
results
спросить, с
on
чем
all
вы это
accounts.
связываете, потому
Uh,
что и ситуация
what
в
is
мировой
behind all of that?
экономике
Because the situation in the
сложная,
global
и
economy
санкции
is very
новые вводятся,
complicated.
и
We are
почему
seeing
такие
more and
показатели,
more new sanctions.
и как вы
How do you
оцениваете итоги
explain
сегодняшней
such
встречи,
these good
а
results?
также
So, what are the
на
results of
ваш
today's
взгляд,
meeting, and
как будет развиваться ЕАЭС в дальнейшем, то есть
how
ваш
is the
прогноз
Eurasian Economic Union going
развития
to
организации в
develop
ближайшее
going
время
forward
и на среднесрочную
in the
перспективу?
short term and in the longer term?
Ну, что касается
Well,
хороших
speaking
результатов,
on the good results that we've achieved, I mean, we've always could have gotten even better results, and that's we've always wanted. We always want better results. They predicted that we would have a 20% decline in our economy. There is a decline, but it's only 2.9%, and that's a great difference. So those who promised that we would be losing, well, they were mistaken, and we were not. But I wouldn't exactly say that we are doing perfectly, because there is a decline, however small. We're doing better than many countries. Like I compared ourselves to Europe, we are going to have a 12.2 or 12.3% of inflation, and in Europe they're going 17 or 20 or percent of inflation, or even higher. And when it comes to construction, we're also doing better. But speaking of the European Union, of Europe as a whole, well then, yes, our situation is more stable, and one of the main indicators is unemployment. So why does it happen? Why do we have a lower unemployment than in other countries? Well, that comes from the fundamentals of the Russian economy, which has to do, to a major extent, with the measures that we employed to stabilize our economy, both in Russia and across the nations of the Eurasian Economic Union. We are not closing down our economy. We do not undermine the foundations of our economy. What we are doing is opening pathways for the flows of capital and workforce and goods, and that's important. That's important for ourselves and for our partners within the Eurasian Economic Union. And speaking of our macroeconomic indicators, we're seeing a very stable situation when it comes to the Russian currency, with the Russian ruble, and that has a very positive effect on the economies of our partners. So going back to unemployment, our unemployment is lower than before the pandemic. It used to be 4.7% and now at 3.9%. To our Eurasian Economic Union partners, that matters a lot, because hundreds of thousands of their citizens come to Russia to look for jobs, to work, so they are in demand. That means that these families, these people can send back the money they earn in Russia back to their families back home. And that's a major part of their well-being. Another component of all that is the energy market. Like I said, in Europe, gas prices are going over the top. I think it's it's about $1,700. I think a day before yesterday it was something like that. In some countries, we are selling gas, natural gas, that's 10 times as cheap. So this allows us to stabilize the economy of our fellow Eurasian Economic Union member states. So we help them by selling them this cheaper energy. we help them develop their agriculture, their industry, and when it comes to some basic foodstuffs, there are no problems in Russia. In fact, we are exporting our food, and when our partners need that, when they need our help, of course, we sell them, we export to them everything they want, everything they need. So it all comes together, and this is all part of the reason why we're doing so good. So we're looking for solutions in places where we need it, and sometimes it took a lot of time to negotiate, but we did negotiate. We did all that hard work, and that's finally yielding some really good results. Mr. President, Российская газета. My question is about the prisoner swap of Victor Bout. Sorry. Also, the previous question was you asked about the development of the Eurasian Economic Union in the short term and in the longer term, because there was so much you asked about. So, about the prospects for our development, I think we've got some really good prospects, and the next specific steps that we're going to take are, well, they're very specific steps. Something that we agreed upon, and I think that's really critical, really essential. We've agreed to create a mechanism to support our cooperation activities when it comes to practical production in the industry, real industry. When it comes to improving our technological sovereignty, our independence, that's really important. And that's one of the very solid results of our work today. And in the upcoming few years, we are planning to carry out and implement the agreements we've reached before. Specifically, I'm talking about creating a common gas market, and we are planning to formulate specific principles of our joint work. We're also planning to create a common energy market, electricity market. So there's a lot of hard work ahead of us when it comes to negotiating all the details, but we've had some really productive discussions today, and a lot of things were clarified. It's not just about Russia. It's not Russia's position to keep prices high and block someone from buying some goods or energy. No, it's about coordinating and harmonizing economic policies of different countries. Take, for example, well, we have different models of subsidizing our industries and our producers, or take socioeconomic or political aspects. In some countries, prices for consumer goods are subsidized, but the next day they are unable to subsidize them because of those socio-political or economic reasons. So it takes time. And take other country, there are less subsidies there. It's a more market-driven economy, and maybe they have different tariffs for transportation. Take the western border of Russia, for example. Overall, throughout Russia, tariffs are different, but we are trying to level them out. Where's the cheapest gas, do you think? The place where gas is extracted. So, in the Yamalo-Nenets region, it has to be the cheapest, right? But the country is enormous, and we cannot sell gas at one price, at cheap prices in one part of the country, and sell it as higher prices in other parts of the country. So we have to subsidize, for example, this specific sector of the economy. So there have to be, unanimous and joint and common principles of subsidizing across the country and across the region. It all takes time, harmonizing all of these things. And the same goes for taxation, for example. When it comes to regulations and tax codes and the functioning of the tax system and the using of modern digital technologies. Now, we have a common understanding that we need to move towards that goal. It requires a lot of hard work in the coming couple of years, but we have a common understanding that it's necessary, and I think we will achieve great results. We have amazing prospects for the development of transportation infrastructure and logistics chains. Many nations of the world are interested in creating these new logistics corridors, these southwest and north and east-west logistics corridors. Several projects that we've announced, we've heard our partners and other countries express their interest in those projects, and these projects also involve those corridors. So, apart from that, there are many other exciting projects. They're of interest to all members of the Eurasian Economic Union, and I'm sure that the organization will only become stronger with us implementing all those projects. Yes. Back to your question. Yes, I asked about Viktor But. Russia has been trying to get him back for a long time. Finally, we did it. I'd like to hear some details, if you can share them, who negotiated his return, and maybe that is heralds a return to more to a better, more friendly negotiations with the US. Well, when it comes to prisoner exchanges, that's the Federal Security Bureau and agency, and they are responsible for all that. They are continuing to have contacts with the various intelligence services, and everything is possible, of course. But this specific result was this specific victory was a result of hard work, and we're certainly eager to continue to work with our counterparts in the future. Now, whether we could consider this as a prelude to improving our dialogue with the US on other aspects, on other matters, that's not something that we specifically intended to do from the outset. I don't think we could just go from these talks, from these negotiations to resolving some other matters, but this does create some kind of a different atmosphere. Maybe that will yield some positive results. Now, as for the contacts between the various intelligence services, the CIA and others, that was not our initiative. That was initiative of the American side. President Biden proposed that we did that, and we didn't expect those talks to result in anything too positive. They were just business as usual. We have agreed to continue to talk in the future. So going back to oil and gas prices, recently gas introduced a price cap for oil and gas. How is Russia going to react to that? How are we going to respond to that? Will it be a symmetrical response, an equal response? And what will happen to the Russian budget? Will Russia have enough money to deal with all that? Well, don't worry about that. The cap that was proposed is very much in accordance with the price that we are using to sell oil and gas right now. So it's not really that important. So maybe prices for Brent oil, the prices are a bit higher. For other mixes, it's a little lower. But overall, we won't see any problems. We won't lose any money. In fact, all of that doesn't have to do... it doesn't really have to do so much with Russia. It has to do with all producers, all oil and gas producers, because if anyone agrees at some point that it's consumer that has to define the price, that would lead to the collapse of the industry itself, because the consumer always wants the price to be lower. The industry itself, the energy industry, is underfinanced, underinvested as it is. And if we listen to consumers, then investment will go down to zero. That, at some stage, would lead to catastrophic rise, an uncontrolled rise and surge of prices. This will be a collapse of the economy. This is a foolish decision. It was not calculated. It was foolish. So it's not about us, it's not about Russia, it's about the state of the energy markets globally. It's bad. The decision is bad for the global economy, for the global energy markets. So don't worry about Russian budgets, nothing about the Russian budget, nothing wrong will happen to it. But let me say that again. Using these solutions that go counter to the market and to the interests of the markets and of the consumers will produce only bad results. Because even if they are successful in reducing the prices and the prices do go down, then investment will also go down. And consequently, prices in the end, as a result, the prices will surge at some point, and everyone will suffer. So as for Russia, we will just not sell our energy resources to the countries that make decisions like this, who implement policies like this price cap, and perhaps we may think about reducing the production of oil or gas. We have agreements with OPEC+, and we have a certain threshold, a certain limit to the production of these resources. And I'm talking about Russia, of course. We're not implementing that right now, we're just thinking about this, but this is one of the steps we could take. As for the specific steps that Russia will take, these will be all listed in the decree that will be released in the coming weeks.
How do you estimate the current state of things with the special military operation on Wednesday? When you talked to the human rights activists, you said it is going to be a lengthy process. Could you please elaborate more on this? And at that meeting, you said that if Russia is not using the nuclear weapons first, it is not going to be the second to use it. Can you explain this phrase as well? As for the lengthy process, I meant the settlement itself could take a lot of time because the operation is going at its pace, everything is stable, there are no problems with that, so the Defense Ministry is transparent, everything that is happening there on the ground, it is reflected in daily reports by the Defense Ministry, everything is objective, is transparent, so there is nothing to add on my side. As for the settlement in general, yes, I believe it is not going to be simple and it will take some time. But one way or another, all the stakeholders will have to agree with the realities on the ground. That's the first part of your question. The second part, as for the use, I understand that it concerns everyone. It has always been of concern to everyone. As soon as there was the weapons of mass destruction, mankind was worried about what would happen to the planet, to us. Because look, what I meant, I will elaborate on this. The United States, they have the theory of preemptive strike. That's one. Two, they are developing the system of debilitating strike. It's a strike with modern state-of-the-art means on the command centers to disarm the enemy. What are these means, modern means? These are cruise missiles, because we didn't have them, land-based cruise missiles. We got it. We destroyed them. And when the Americans were negotiating with the Soviet Union, they destroyed land-based ones, but they kept the ones that were based in the sea. But now we also have them, and they are more state-of-the-art and even more efficient. That's one. Two, it was believed that this preemptive disarming strike would be used with hypersonic systems, but the United States don't have this, and we do. So if we are to talk about this disarming strike, we should think about using these ideas of enhancing their security. Because in previous years, they didn't shy away from talking about this out loud. Secondly, in the United States, there is this theory, strategy, doctrine even of preemptive strike. We don't have it in our strategy. Our strategy stipulates a return strike because it's not a secret to anyone. What is a return strike? So we are returning the strike, replying. Our systems, when they see that the missiles were launched, if we see it, then we reply. Because we hold exercises of our nuclear forces. We are not hiding that. We are not concealing that. We are informing all the nuclear powers, the United States. We are informing them that we are holding this kind of exercises. They are doing the same. And as soon as we receive this signal about the missile strike, we launch hundreds of our missiles. And it would be impossible to stop them, but that would be a reply, a response. What does it mean? That when the enemy warheads would fall on the Russian Federation, it will happen one way or another. There is no way to avoid that. But nothing would remain from the enemy. It would be eliminated because it's impossible to stop hundreds of missiles. And it stopped them from doing that. But if a potential enemy believes that it would be possible to use the theory, the doctrine of preemptive strike, and we are not considering this option, it makes us think about the threats that are created, that are posed by these kinds of ideas in the defense doctrines of other countries. That's all of it. Good afternoon, TASS agency. Angela Merkel recently said that the Minsk Accords were signed only to give Ukraine time to prepare and then to wage war in Russia. How do we take this? Did we know that our partners were doing this to us? Thank you. Honestly, for me, it came out of the blue. I didn't expect that. It was disappointing. Frankly speaking, I did not expect to hear that from the ex-chancellor, because I always believed that the leadership of Germany is behaving in an honest way. Yes, they supported Ukraine, they were on Ukraine's side, but still, I thought that the leadership of the German Republic, they always sincerely wanted to help with the settlement of that situation based on the principles that we have agreed upon, including within the Minsk process. And what you just said, it means that we did the right thing when we launched the special military operation. Why? Because it turned out that all these Minsk Accords, no one was going to implement them. Ukraine, I'm quoting their ex-president Poroshenko, he said the same thing, he signed them, but he didn't plan to implement them. But I hope that other participants of that process were sincere, but they were also lying to us. And the idea was to pump Ukraine with weapons, to prepare them for hostilities. Yes, we can see that now. Probably we were too late to react. Probably we should have done that earlier, because we hoped that we would be able to negotiate within this process within the Minsk Accords negotiation process. But well, what can I say? It begs the question of trust. The trust is almost gone, it's almost at zero, but after such statements, of course, you wonder, how can you negotiate with them? About what? Is it possible to negotiate with them? What would be the guarantees? That's the question that we're asking. But eventually we will have to negotiate, and I said that on many times that we are ready, we are open for negotiations. But it makes us think about who we are dealing with. And the final question, please, one last question. Interfax, Ksenia Golovanova, Mr. President, did you have a chance to talk to President of Kazakhstan and Prime Minister of Uzbekistan to talk to them about the idea that Tokayev was talking about, referring to you, about some kind of trilateral gas union, gas alliance? Tashkent is receiving gas from Gazprom, from Turkmenistan. Why are we talking about Russian gas supplies? What gas pipelines would be used for this? And how do you estimate? Is it something that could happen in the nearest future? It's not a secret, actually. We started with the first question. Your colleague asked this question. And she said that the Eurasian Economic Union countries is stable, sustainable, is satisfactory, it has good potential, and this is true. But that means that the economies will grow, will continue to grow. They are growing now, they will grow in the future. And in turn, it means that there will be more consumption, more energy consumption. Already now, there is a shortage of it. And such countries as Kazakhstan that are producing their own gas, Uzbekistan, they are looking into the future, and they are doing the right thing. They have really good teams working on their economies, good political leadership, and presidents of both countries. They are looking into the future. They are trying to calculate how much gas they are going to need in the future, and then they conclude that they need additional volumes. And I also mean there are obligations coming from the previous years on export, because they have obligations on exporting. And the internal consumption is growing, and they should fulfill their export obligations. And it all is causing the need to compare the notes, to look into what we can do. Can we do anything? Yes, we can, but there is still a lot of questions, open questions. For example, north of Kazakhstan is receiving gas from Orenburg. But in Orenburg, the gas is coming from Krajanak, from the Kazakhstani gas field. So, and Kazakhstan is getting it, paying the internal Russian prices. And to pump it to Uzbekistan, we will have to use the gas pipeline system that was built in the Soviet time, and it has to be maintained, it has to be fixed. It has two pipelines. One is not being used at all, and the second one is used to supply gas from Karakachanak to Orenburg. And if we pump gas to Uzbekistan, it will have to work in both directions. And then there is another open question. We will have to build a separate gas pipeline through Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan. And in Russia, we will have to build internal infrastructure for additional gas supply to Central Asia, inside Russia. And it's some 260 billion rubles, the price of it. So there are a lot of open questions that has to be coordinated, has to be worked over. And then we will be able to make a coordinated decision, reach some compromise, and we are able to find them. So in this regard, it could be some kind of energy alliance, but we have our obligations to the EU countries, Uzbekistan is an observer state as of yet. But for Uzbekistan is also another chance to look closer at how the Eurasian Economic Union is working, is operating, and to find some contact points with the Union in general. There are no insurmountable obstacles, but it requires systemic work at the level of the experts and to calculate the financial part of it, to coordinate all the efforts, coordinate the participation of every country in the investment part of this deal. Everyone is ready, everyone is eager, everyone is ready to invest into this jointly. It's a very good, very promising work with a lot of potential, very promising project. And we will do this work, and we have started already. In Moscow, we are going to receive colleagues from Kazakhstan. Recently, we've received a delegation from Uzbekistan. Miller is going to travel there. The vice prime ministers will travel there. So we have started this work, and it has a good potential, and I'm confident it will yield good results. Thank you. Someone was raising their hand. Please. And TV, Mr. President, I would like to go back to the special military operation because we can see your pin now. Recently, you said there is no reason to start another wave of mobilization yet. What can change that? Because so Russians have no reason to be worried after the new year. There is no such factors. 300,000 were drafted. Let me reiterate it again. 150,000 are in the grouping of forces. All right. Out of them, only half of it, slightly more than that, 77,000, have joined the combat units. And the rest, they are either at the second or third line. Basically, that's a territorial defense units. Or they are still being trained. And 150,000 more, they are not even with the troops. These guys are at the training grounds, at the training centers. What kind of additional mobilization are you talking about? We already have a combat reserve, the half of everyone who have been drafted so far. So what kind of additional mobilization are you talking about? You know, we've discussed that too. We need to look at the situation, at how the situation is developing. Maybe unit could be rotated because all of them will have the status of the combatant participant of the hostilities. So maybe someone is still being trained in the Far East or in Siberia, and other guys are in the combat zone, so we will have to look at this. It's up to the Defense Ministry, to the General Staff. They are considering that they will make their decision. As for the mobilization, I think I gave you the full answer.
Today, Vladimir Vladimirovich, Joseph Borrell заявил...
Russia Today, Mr. President Joseph Borrell said that Africa is supporting Russia because we can assume that these people don't know where Donbas is. Maybe they don't even know who Putin is. What is your reaction? Who said that? Joseph Borrell. Borrell, well, he's a large-scale expert. He's the big politician of today. They used to describe Brezhnev like this, but in Africa they know what Russia is, where Russia is. In Africa they know what role Russia played when they were getting liberated from colonialism. There almost no single African country that did not receive our support, information, sometimes military support, sometimes financial support. We have very sustainable, good, friendly relations with African countries, and we continue to have these relations with them. And if these people knew what is the state of things in Africa now, they would not hinder the supplies of Russian food and Russian fertilizers to Africa, because their yields, their crops depend on this, and the salvation of hundreds of thousands of people from starving to death depends on this. and there are still our fertilizers in some European ports. And I've mentioned that a lot of times we are ready to transfer them to the African nations free of charge. Partially, it has started under the pressure of the Secretary General of the UN, but this problem has not been resolved in full. So these officials from the European Union should stop talking these empty words. They should support them in practice. They should not buy food from the world global markets with the money that they are printing. They should not make the inflation bigger. They should not put the peoples of Africa into this difficult situation, and they should not stop Russia from working, from doing this work that is so needed for the people in Africa, people who really need this support. So let's stop at this. Thank you very much. Then the very last question, Commerçant Andrei Kolesnikov. Today, Ilya Yashin, who's that? A blogger. What did he get? He was sentenced to 8.5 years. Don't you think that 8.5 years of prison term for just saying something, that's just too much? To be frank, I just don't assume anything. I have a degree as a lawyer that I received in Leningrad State University, and I want to tell you one thing, that interfering with the activities of the courts is unacceptable. I can't put under any doubt any rulings of the court. There are laws, there are rules. Citizens can get protection. They can go to some higher institution, and the lawyers of Mr. Yashin, they obviously know what to do. May I now? Thank you very much. You're at Desatova, Radio Vesti FM, and recently we are getting contradictory messages about supplies for the army. What are you getting? Contradictory messages about how the army is being supplied. You're saying that the problems are being dealt with, but still we hear a lot of reports from the troops. They are not only asking for gear, but also for medicine, because they're running out of these things very fast. So who do we believe? Reports from the Defense Ministry or people at the front line? You can only believe me. And we are working with the Defense Ministry almost daily. We are discussing these matters with them. I have to say that we used to have some problems. Judging from what you're saying, probably there are still some issues, but from what I understand, they are becoming smaller and smaller in scope. They are not as urgent as it was at the beginning, especially after the mobilization. But judging from what you're saying, and probably you're right, the problem has not been resolved fully yet. But it's just a matter of time. I think the biggest issue we have dealt with, but it takes some time to develop the manufacturing activities, and the Trade and Industry Ministry is dealing with that now.
So, last week you crossed the Crimea Bridge once again, so this is still a very important project to you. Well, let me just support the people who constructed, who built that bridge, because I'd like to support them. In a very short time span, they made a massive amount of work, and I wanted to see for myself whether it was true, because it's one thing to read something in the reports, and it's very different when you get verified information from independent sources, and the same goes for the bridge. I wanted to look for myself how good it is made, how well it is made, and it's certainly made really well at the highest levels of technology, and I don't know if it was heard in the video, because there was a lot of wind back at the time, but some of the builders said that there was some details to correct a millimeter here or there, so that it's all according to regulations, and that's what they're going to do, because in fact there are almost 3 bridges all in one place, because there's a bridge for car transportation and for trains, and so trains are always going there as well. But unfortunately, there was this cistern that was destroyed, that was full of fuel, and it exploded, and there was a fire which damaged some of the construction. I think that they promised to me that the major part will be restored by late March. Well, the road, and as for the train track, that will be restored by the middle of next summer. First they said by fall, and then they said no, we'll get it done by the middle of summer, and they're doing everything fine, and I'm sure that they will complete the reconstruction on time. Thank you.